Let's get one thing straight before we dive into the ledger. The version of the afterlife you were sold in Sunday school, the one with the cartoon pitchforks and the red spandex, is a PR distraction. It's a sanitized, almost comical caricature designed to make the real thing feel like a myth. But if you look at the source code, the official documents they've been gatekeeping for 2 millennia, you start to realize the reality is far more calculated and, frankly, terrifying. We are talking about an infrastructure of judgment that makes modern surveillance states look like a game of tag. The part people always whisper about is why the narrative shifted from a simple lights out to a permanent high-stakes incarceration. What are they actually protecting? Or better yet, who is cashing out on the fear? The official records won't show you this, but the modern hell isn't just a metaphor or some poetic device for feeling bad about your choices. That's the light version they sell to the masses to keep the optics manageable. In the inner circles of theology, it's treated as a hard physical reality, a literal, no-exit facility. They call it a biblical reality, but when you peel back the layers, you see it's described as something much more complex and severe than a simple fire pit. It's an ontological trap. Convenient timing for a religious structure that needed to maintain total control over a chaotic population, wouldn't you say? If you tell people they just disappear when they die, you lose your leverage. But if you tell them the fire never goes out and the consciousness never fades, now you've got a captive audience for life. The severity isn't a bug, it's a feature of the system designed to ensure the cost of opting out is infinitely high. Now, if you want to see how this whole project started, you have to look at the early Hebrew Sheol. This was the original basement of the universe. But here's the kicker. Sheol wasn't a torture chamber. It was a shadowy, neutral realm where everyone went. Righteous, wicked, it didn't matter. It was the great equalizer. No VIP sections, no punishment wings, just a silent, dusty waiting room. But think about the money trail of power here. If everyone ends up in the same shadowy basement, regardless of how much they tithed or how many laws they followed, where is the incentive to obey the gatekeepers? The Sheol model was a PR disaster for a rising religious hierarchy. It offered no carrot and, more importantly, no stick. So the narrative began to evolve. What the history books gloss over is how Sheol slowly started being renovated into a place of judgment. They started adding partitions. They started whispering about lower Sheol. They took a neutral state of death and turned it into a tiered system of accountability. It was the first step in the ultimate bait and switch of the afterlife. The real branding happened with Gehenna. This is where the optics get truly dark. Gehenna wasn't some mystical, airy-fairy concept. It was a literal place, the Valley of Hinnom, right outside Jerusalem's walls. And let me tell you, its resume was a nightmare. This was the site of ancient child sacrifices, a place associated with the darkest insider cults of the old world. Later, it became the city's smoldering trash heap, where the fire literally never went out because there was always more refuse to burn. It smelled of sulfur, rot, and death. So, what did the architects of the narrative do? They took this local trauma, this literal hell on earth, and used it as the visual branding for eternal judgment. When Jesus used the image of Gehenna, he wasn't just talking about a bad place. He was weaponizing a local landmark of horror. It's a classic move in the fear-based marketing playbook. Take something the people can already smell and see and tell them that's what's waiting for them on the other side if they don't fall in line. Are we really supposed to buy that the creator of the universe just happened to choose a local dump as the model for his divine justice? Or was it just a highly effective way to keep the locals in a state of constant visceral anxiety? By the time the Old Testament prophets, like Isaiah, Daniel, and Ezekiel, got hold of the script, the stakes were being raised to an existential level. They weren't just talking about national consequences. They introduced the personal liability clause. This is where we see the transition into ideas of eternal judgment and the resurrection of the dead, not for a party, but for a trial. Daniel 2:2 is the smoking gun here, shame and everlasting contempt. Think about the power move there. Death used to be the end of your problems. The prophets changed the contract. They told the people that even if you die, you're not off the hook. You will be brought back, and your shame will be permanent. It's the ultimate no-escape clause. Who is cashing out on this? The ones who claim to hold the keys to avoiding that everlasting shame. They turned God into a cosmic auditor who never closes the books. It was a calculated shift from communal religion to individual surveillance. You weren't just responsible for your tribe anymore. You were responsible for your eternal destiny, and the gatekeepers were the only ones who knew the audit requirements. As Jewish thought evolved, the afterlife infrastructure got even more sophisticated. We're talking about Hades and compartments of judgment. By the time you get to the intertestamental period, the Whisper Network was buzzing with stories of the bosom of Abraham for the good guys and a place of torment for the bad guys, separated by a great uncrossable chasm. It's the ultimate gated community versus the slums model. They were essentially creating a spiritual class system. They took the Greek concept of Hades and mapped it onto the Hebrew world to create a more manageable, segmented afterlife. This wasn't just about justice, it was about sorting the inventory. If you could categorize people into compartments even before the final judgment, you could maintain a psychological grip on them while they were still breathing. It's the waiting room strategy. Make the wait so uncomfortable or so exclusive that people will do anything to ensure they end up on the right side of the fence. But the final reveal, the big end game, comes in the book of Revelation. This is where they introduce the lake of fire. This isn't just a fire pit, it's the second death. It's the ultimate liquidation of assets. Think about the narrative logic. The lake of fire is described as the final destination for Satan, demons, and, here's the fine print, anyone whose name is not in the book of life. It's a total system purge. They even say death and Hades are thrown into it. It's the corporate merger of every fear-based image they've built up for centuries, condensed into one final uncreation. The book of life is the ultimate velvet rope. If you're not on the list, you're not just out, you're liquidated. It's the highest stakes optics play in human history. Join the club or face the total erasure of your existence in a state of eternal burning. Conveniently, the only way to get your name on that list is through the authorized channels. The monopoly on salvation is complete. And don't let the metaphor crowd fool you. The text is brutal about the eternal conscious punishment aspect. They use phrases like forever and ever, unquenchable fire, and weeping and gnashing of teeth. They aren't talking about a quick exit. They are talking about a high-resolution suffering that never ends. Why the conscious part? Because unconscious punishment doesn't have the same PR value. If you don't feel it, you're not being managed. The insider truth is that the threat only works if the punishment is experienced. The unquenchable branding is designed to eliminate hope. In any other context, we'd call this psychological warfare. They've created a narrative where the exit door is locked from the outside, and the smoke of their torment rises forever. It's the ultimate no refunds policy. Are we really supposed to believe this is about love, or is it about the absolute, irreversible optics of a power that refuses to let its subjects ever leave its jurisdiction?
Here is the part that really messes with people's heads. Jesus, the one marketed as the Prince of Peace, the one with the Love Your Neighbor PR campaign, is the one who's marketing the Prince of Peace, the one who's warning about the narrow gate and the outer darkness. Why? If you're playing the good cop, bad cop routine, Jesus is doing both jobs. He offers the exclusive cure while being the primary whistleblower on the disease. He's the one who warns that most people, the many, are on the broad road to destruction. It's a classic bottleneck business model. You create a scenario where the standard path leads to catastrophe, and then you present yourself as the only narrow escape route. The savior becomes the most terrifying figure in the book because he's the one who confirms the nightmare is real. It's the ultimate buy-in move. If the nice guy is telling you the basement is on fire, you're going to believe him. This leads to the exclusive salvation clause, the narrow gate doctrine. The claim is that only through Christ can you avoid this eternal audit. It's a total monopoly on the exit strategy. From a money trail perspective, this is genius. You don't just offer a service,